Well, we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carol Malice, and I'm the Executive Director of Rhode Island Bio, Rhode Island's life sciences trade organization. So we serve as the voice for life sciences in the industry and offer our members access to resources, training, advisory services, and information sharing like this morning's webinar. Today, we're so excited to launch the second season of our Women in Science speaker series. Our series is intended to provide a powerful forum and supportive environment for emerging and advanced women leaders, and to share best practices, provide insights and experience, and offer advice on leadership and professional development. So I want to thank the Castle Group for co-hosting this event, and for this session sponsor, Snapdragon Chemistry. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce my co-host, David Tanklevsky from the Castle Group, who will introduce our guest speakers.
Great. Thank you so much, Carol, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. We're so excited to have you with us. As Carol said, my name is David Tanklevsky, Account Director at the Castle Group, and figured I'd just start off by sharing with people just a little bit about Snapdragon Chemistry and then introducing Jillian and Grace, who I know will tell us a lot more about Snapdragon and their work with the company in detail. Snapdragon is a chemical technology firm providing services to the pharmaceutical industry. Its headquarters, R&D, manufacturing facilities are in Waltham, Massachusetts. It was co-founded in 2014 by world-renowned flow chemistry expert and MIT professor Tim Jameson, PhD. The company focuses on developing practical flow chemistry solutions for challenging chemical transformations to help discover, develop, and implement scalable synthetic processes for their clients. Continuous manufacturing, which I know Grace and Jillian can tell us about in much more detail, is the process of manufacturing pharmaceuticals through an assembly line of fully integrated components. Snapdragon does R&D, testing, and manufacturing. It's worked with many of the nation's leading pharmaceutical companies and chemical manufacturers on a number of their most important chemistry challenges. Last year, the company partnered with the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, BARDA, to develop a manufacturing platform for a critical component used in mRNA-based vaccines. In 2022, the company is expanding into a new 51,000 square foot lab down the street from its Waltham headquarters, and they also recently welcomed pioneering chemical engineer Professor Donna Blackman to their scientific advisory board. So that's a little bit about Snapdragon, and now very excited to introduce Jillian Sheeran and Grace Russell and provide a quick bio snapshot on both of them. Jillian is an engineer at Snapdragon Chemistry who has been with the company for over 6 years, starting as an associate scientist before being promoted to senior scientific associate in 2018 and engineer in 2020. Previously, she was a synthetic chemistry technician at Raindance Technologies and a chemical development intern at Vertex Pharmaceuticals. Currently, she is pursuing her master's degree in chemical engineering at Columbia University and also leads Snapdragon's internal employee advocacy group. Earlier this year, she was published in Organic Process Research and Development's special edition, Celebrating Women in Process Chemistry. And as Jillian shared with us just prior to the meeting, she is also the very first employee of Snapdragon Chemistry back in 2015. Also, pleasure to introduce Grace Russell. She's a senior scientist at Snapdragon and began with the company in 2019. She was recently promoted. While earning her PhD in organic chemistry at MIT, she worked on developing new methods and technologies for continuous flow synthesis. Along with Jillian, she contributed scalable on-demand production of purified diazomethane suitable for sensitive catalytic reactions, which appeared earlier this year in Organic Process Research. She also co-leads Snapdragon's internal employee advocacy group and has been a mentor and leader for young women looking to break into the life sciences industry. So that's a little bit about Snapdragon and Grace and Jill, and pleasure to be here. Carol, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off.
Excellent, excellent. Were we going to do our poll first, David, or are you going to do that a little bit later?
Sure, that's a good idea. We could get started with that so people can kind of vote as we go here, but we do have a poll question for everyone here. I know we have some young students joining us today and some people who are a little bit more established in their career. So our question primarily for our students is, do you feel you've been provided enough guidance to confidently enter into the STEM industry? So if you want to vote on that as we go, we will announce the poll results in a little bit, and we have some questions for Grace and Jillian built off of that. But I see people voting already, so thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So Jillian and Grace, it'd be nice for us to get to know a little bit about you, where you went to school, where did you grow up, and where did your interest in science come from?
Sorry? Sure. So I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and then I went to undergrad at Franciscan University. It's a small liberal arts school. And then through some connections that I made there, I met Tim Jameson, my future advisor, and started working in his lab as an undergrad. And then really what sparked my interest in science primarily is that it just kind of made sense for me. I was able to see the puzzles that were happening and an intuition for how to solve them. And that was really important for understanding what I was excited to do. And then what I was, it felt natural for me.
Great, thanks. I grew up in Norwell, Massachusetts, and I eventually went to undergrad at Stonehill College, which is right outside of Boston. I actually went as undeclared science because although I was excelling at science and math in high school, I really didn't have a real passion for anything at the time. There wasn't that drive just yet. It wasn't until about halfway through my undergrad degree where I declared environmental science as my major, just because I was doing well in the classes. And then I was introduced to organic chemistry, which like really started to fuel my interest in chemistry and where I was introduced to pharmaceutical industry. And that's what really hit home for me. And that's where I knew I wanted to be. I was a late bloomer in the sense of knowing what I wanted to do. I've also changed my career since then from chemistry. But still, I have decided that the pharmaceutical industry and the science field is for me.
Excellent. It's great to get a sense of where it all began and you know how you got interested in following this path, and how did you get to Snapdragon Chemistry?
I think you have a great story. Why don't you go ahead?
Thanks. Yes. So actually, when I was interning at Vertex Pharmaceuticals, one of my projects was to replicate Tim Jameson's, Grace's advisor from MIT, one of his projects. So it was my first introduction to flow chemistry, and basically I emailed him out of the blue and I just said, hey, I'm really enjoying the work that I'm doing. I'd love to talk to you. About a year later, Tim emailed me, said, hey, what are you up to? Do you want to come start this company with me? So I pretty much dropped everything that I was doing and took the risk. But yes, so 6.5 years later, I'm still here, and we are exponentially growing, and it's been so much fun to see this company get to where it is today.
Well, that shows a lot of initiative on your part. So it must have felt good to know this is what I'd like to do, and then to take some action, and then to get that great feedback. And after all, you were the first employee, isn't that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it paid off.
I would say so. Yeah, definitely.
How about you, Grace?
Yeah, so all through grad school, I think the company started around the same time or a little bit after I started grad school. And so Tim, my whole grad school, I think you'd be a great fit. I think you'd be a great fit. And I had other ideas, but then eventually I think he was right. Yeah. So it's fine.
So the name of the company is very interesting and we'd love to hear more about actually what you do at the company now.
Snapdragon is, a little bit of the origin behind the name is actually kind of funny. So Snapdragon, I've heard, is like the flower, and then flow chemistry. So flow chemistry. Just fun little hidden information there. But yeah, so we are a contract manufacturing organization located in Waltham. And we are a technology-driven company that we use flow chemistry and automation to tackle the toughest problems in chemical manufacturing. We actually just opened up a facility, or sorry, we are opening up a facility across the street, as David mentioned, that we will start developing APIs for clinical trials, and hopefully that'll be done by next year. So it's a really exciting thing to be part of.
Yeah, and a little bit more background on what flow chemistry is. So traditionally, organic synthesis has all been done in a batch-wise manner in really humongous batch vessels, just like a giant cooking container, I guess, where you dump everything in and then purify the reagent once it's finished. And so flow chemistry is trying to use a more continuous manufacturing method where we are introducing the reagents using pumping technology that then go from starting material to the final product in a fully continuous manner. So at the end, just dripping out the end is your final compound. And so we're trying to make pharmaceuticals in a much more efficient way by using enabling technologies such as flow chemistry.
That's amazing. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, that's definitely what I thought starting in grad school. I was really fascinated by this new way of making a molecule. And what I really loved is that it didn't have all the rules written. So for a batch reaction coming into chemistry, you know, these are the rules you have to follow. It's been done 100 times. And so here's this whole new field that's exciting, and it doesn't really have any rules. And so as somebody in a field that's just starting, you get to figure it out. And so that was awesome to me starting in grad school.
Yeah, it's not widely practiced, I would say, between a lot of within a lot of pharmaceutical companies. We are definitely one of the leaders in flow chemistry, and it, you know, our clients come to us with tough problems. I mean, they would do them themselves if they could. So that's what makes our job really rewarding in that sense as well.
In terms of both of your, career paths, you talked about what got you interested in science to begin with, but I know you've shared with us there are some pretty personal experiences that you've both had that led you to see that perhaps you could make a real difference in your career, in your profession. So I wonder if you can kind of describe what those key moments were.
Sure, yeah. So my brother, his whole life suffered from pretty severe mental illness. And so one thing that was really fascinating to me was how drugs were able to make an impact on his life. But then one thing with neurological drugs is that they often work for some period of time and then behaviors change and they're no longer effective. And so these types of complications with pharmaceuticals and drugging specific targets were really interesting to me. And that's where I started in organic chemistry.
So my experience is very similar, a situation that hits home. So I mentioned that I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. About halfway through college, or my undergrad degree, around 2012, one of my best friends, Michelle, and her sister, Nicole, both qualified for Vertex Pharmaceuticals' new cystic fibrosis drug called Kalydeco. It was the first drug to treat the underlying cause of cystic fibrosis, which was a pretty big deal at the time. There had been no such drug like that. And so what I was determined to work in that type of industry where I'm actually contributing to the development of these groundbreaking drugs. And the rest has pretty much been history. I was fortunate to intern there for back-to-back summers. So, and then, like David mentioned before, with the working with BARDA this past summer was an awesome experience to actually, be an individual that is contributing to developing the vaccines or, the mRNAs for the vaccines. It was something that you go home and you feel pretty good about.
I was going to say, is it something that you think about when you're in the lab, the kind of real world impact that the work you're doing may have in the future?
In the grand scheme of things, yes, but on a day-to-day basis, you're more focused on the work you're doing. But I think it's like more of an end of the day kind of feeling where, you do reflect and you're like, well, it's tough work, but it's worth it.
And then as far as, being young women that have come up in the world of science and trying to and you've successfully forged this path through the industry. Wonder if you can speak a little bit about some of the challenges that you had on your way up, and just now looking back at them, sort of how you reflect on them as people who are now very well established within this industry.
First,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. So I would say, so I took the route of going straight to the industry after undergraduate. And so I was about 21, 22 when I entered the field. So I'd say age was a pretty big challenge for me. At one of my working experiences, I wanted to message Tim Jameson, which led me to this opportunity today, but I was told that, Tim was too busy for me and that I shouldn't bother him because, he wasn't directly affiliated with like the current project I was working on through the organization I was with. And so it took me about 2 weeks to finally build up the courage to look past that advice and email him. And I'm so glad I did, because, someone telling you shouldn't do something, but your gut says, I don't think that's the best opportunity for me. I think I'm going to tackle that. I think that if I had given into that, my confidence probably would have been hindered quite a bit. However, Tim graciously responded within a day. So, that was a big, that was a huge accomplishment for me as a young individual trying to enter the field. I would also say the lack of women in senior roles have been a little bit challenging. As a young professional, you look for a mentor at a young age, and it sometimes gets to be difficult when you're seeing a low percentage of women in these senior roles. I've been very fortunate to have my voice and my opinions heard at an early start due to being here at Snapdragon, due to the size of the company. But I know that's not the case for a lot of other women in our field. And, I think that's why we'll go on to talk about why this advocacy group that Grace founded at the company has been such a huge impact for, preventing these challenges preventing young women from experiencing these challenges as they enter the fields.
Yeah, for me, I think the most challenging part of where I've gotten today is probably from my background. I came from a pretty small town where the values were not, it was really stigmatized for women to prioritize their career. And so going to grad school and choosing myself and my education and my accomplishments was really frowned upon. And so I think I had to overcome some of those mindsets, and that was the most challenging aspect. Since then, I've had really great mentorship throughout. I had great relationships with my undergrad advisor and my grad school advisor. And so in that regard, I was really fortunate. But a lot of my peers had advisors that were really pretty horrible to them. So I think an important thing is, and one of the most challenging aspects is getting through the grad school experience and still feeling motivated and excited about being a woman in science. And I think that's very challenging for a lot of young women still.
So talking about the field in general, Grace and Jillian, according to data from the U.S. Census, the percentage of women working in STEM fields has increased by 3 times the percentage of 50 years ago, but still only 27% of STEM workers were women in 2019. Do you get the sense that it's becoming easier for women to carve out careers in science, or do you still think there are really some big challenges that remain?
Yeah, sure. So I think things are getting better, especially in the industry world. I feel like it's clear to see that people are really more mindful in their hiring practices, in promotion practices. And I think that is allowing women to really succeed, is really this change in mindset and understanding that there is a lot of implicit bias. One thing that is really challenging that I was leading to earlier is the fact that, especially going through the PhD route, you're really focusing on this single mentor-mentee relationship. And a lot of your career and what your experience is dependent on a single person. And so that can lead to some challenging experiences for a lot of people as they're going through that experience. And so, yeah, I think that's still a major challenge, is that a lot of people, they get their confidence hurt, or their motivation to try and succeed in science kind of diminished through that experience.
Yeah, I agree with Grace. Building off of what she said with this like mentor-mentee relationship, I do still think that that is a bit of a gap. You know, when Grace and I were kind of discussing offline about these situations, I related it to something that I experienced not even in the working industry. It's more of like a coaching, like from my sports career, like a coach and a male coach and a female player. There's a lot of studies that have been done on that, and they've looked into why, you know, the relationship between the male coach and the female player, and how important it is to be more like highly sensitive and highly aware to the different emotions that an individual, like male or female, may possess. And I think that when you're a young woman entering the field, it's really important to have somebody that is highly aware of how to communicate effectively and how to process, you know, like, and mold at a young individual, and help them build into a confident professional, instead of, you know, the tough love does not work. And I think that's something that will always be a challenge, but I think, you know, there's third parties that you can hire in to help coach these mentors and help them understand the most effective way to talk to their peers. And then yeah, I think, yeah, that's pretty much.
Yeah, we were discussing that. I feel like that is such a gap even to this day, is teaching people to mentor others that are dissimilar to you. And this goes for all, you know, all forms of people who are discriminated against. You need to be able to understand what they need and listen to them. And then training on how to do that, I feel like, is somewhere that in industry is also lacking, and how to be an effective mentor, because that is such an important aspect of a good career, is making sure that you feel included, you feel listened to, and that support that you can accomplish your goals.
Well, I think that's very important. It sounds like, you know, particularly being in the sciences, there's some unique aspects of your work, and you know, how you interact with people. You have a lot of technical people that you're working with, and so the soft skills are not going to be as predominant as the more technical skills. So it certainly is part of the challenge of being in sciences. What are some of the ways that you think the sciences can help support women in STEM? What can we do to help women? You mentioned having, you know, effective mentoring. What else can we do?
Yeah, so one thing that I think everyone can do is to also support women being involved in their external network events. So like, there's empowering women in organic chemistry. So as a mentor, you can support your female mentees to be involved in things like this, to give them a sense of community. One thing that we did that I think has been a real force for good, especially for making women feel included at our company, was due to really a shortage of women to hire into senior management roles. We unfortunately didn't really have any women in the senior management role for a while. We have hired a fantastic head of QA, and she's fantastic, and that's a great direction to see the company going. But we started a group to be able to support the women here at the company. And so what we really wanted to focus on, since there wasn't this female role model that we had in the company, is being able to support and help each other out through our helping others with our self-evaluations, doing outreach, discussing with the company just about things like implicit bias so that we can start this conversation and have it aware that these things are going on and that it's something that everyone needs to combat, male and female. It's a societal problem. It's not a male problem. And so we wanted to be able to have these conversations. And then I think in general, it's created this sense of community and support for the women here at the company, which is going to allow people to be more confident, to ask for what they want, to promote themselves. And I think that's where it's really challenging sometimes whenever you don't feel included or feel like you're the same as everybody else at your company. Yeah. So
yeah, I think it goes back to Jillian, just if I could say this, it goes back to your feeling in your gut that you should do something, but the advice that you got probably wasn't right for you. So that it's a very fine line.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, you know, I don't want to speak for Grace, but I think that we are both I would say we're both pretty confident in ourselves, and we actually do have a voice that we use. And, you know, a lot of people don't feel that. A lot of people don't feel comfortable using their voice, or maybe they're self-hindering themselves by saying, I'm too young, or like, I don't have enough experience. But you know, that shouldn't prevent you from taking risks. That shouldn't prevent you from, you know, taking more opportunities, maybe going outside your comfort zone. So this group, this internal advocacy group, has been really fantastic in the sense that, you know, I've even had at one of our gatherings, our get-togethers, I had someone that I mentored, say that she actually didn't feel comfortable speaking her mind unless it was through me, which was really, that really hit home. That was fantastic to hear that, because I still consider myself pretty young, and to have someone put their trust in me to speak out for them, that's a really great feeling. And I think that just goes to show that the group's working. Doesn't matter what age you are. Like you know, Grace and I seek advice in each other all the time, same age, like, you know, you just use each other to support each other.
It's about, I think it can be, especially in the science field, somewhat isolating if you don't see yourself in your coworkers. And so I feel like that's what's so important about a group like this, is trying to create a sense of community and support. And so that's where also there's other groups. It doesn't necessarily have to be inside of a company or inside of a school. There's other groups that are for STEM fields in your broader area. So you can go out and meet others that are going to have maybe experience that's more relevant towards you and that you might be able to learn from or get support. Mm-hmm. Just even telling somebody that they should go for something and maybe they wouldn't have that confidence. And so giving that sense of community can help people a lot.
That group sounds so valuable. How do you approach your meetings? Do you have like an agenda, or do you have questions that people present to you? How do you run those meetings?
So I think we've done a few different things. So we've normally centered around a few events that we've run. So we ran an event where we broke the company up into small groups to have a productive discussion about implicit bias and how we can be better at combating that. And so we had some planning meetings around that, where we had discussions internally about what's the best way to have a productive meeting. And then we've also done more just group bonding activities where we can go get lunch and just to build this sense of community. But generally, we've been focusing around a larger event that we'll plan for a while ahead of time, and then work towards that, and then regroup after and figure out what the next plan is going to be.
Yeah, COVID has hindered our community outreach, or our original goals that we had for the community outreach efforts, because, you know, we were actually able to volunteer at this Youth Women in Science, or Youth Women in STEM summer camp, which was an amazing opportunity. I didn't know of such a camp when I was younger. However, we were able to create these, fun simulating experiments, laboratory experiments, for young girls of all ages, and talk to them, not only perform the experiments with them, so they were actually working hands-on in a wet lab, but we were also able to tell them a little bit about ourselves and like how we got to where we were. And it was really cool, asking some of these this young women, being like, what do you like about science? Like, what do you want to be? And like, they already knew what they wanted to be when they grew up, which I found awesome. Like, that's just fantastic. That confidence at a young age. It's inspiring. And, I think also, sorry, no, I think we have also started something with the Girl Scouts community as well. So we hope to continue to reach out to these younger women at, their prime. Like, this is when they're starting to dream about what their future career is going to be, and letting them know, like, there are women in science. And
yeah, and we're excited about science. We're a group of young women. Well, they might not view us as that young.
They probably think we're old.
Oh, yeah. But still, that it's not a bunch of older people in a lab. We're there having fun, excited about what we do, and we want to spread that excitement to explain about why they should be in STEM and what they can accomplish, what they can do for the world.
Do you think there's a difference in the distinctions between the progress being made with women in the sciences versus other STEM fields? How do you think the sciences stack up against the other STEM fields?
I mean, in general, statistically, there are fewer women in our field, process chemistry. I think the statistic is about 20% of women are of retainment of women in process chemistry. It also is statistically proven that a lot of the women in process chemistry are very young, and that number tends to drop as women, have families and they feel as though they can't handle a work-life balance, or maybe their work hasn't been accommodating to them in the past about this work-life balance. So
but in general, I think there needs to be support for women all across STEM. Like, it doesn't really matter which specific field. We need to support women in math, in computers, in engineering. I think there's a lack of support historically in all of those fields.
That's a good segue into our poll question, and thanks to everyone for checking in on it. I also failed to mention at the beginning, if people do have questions for Grace and Jillian, you could type them into the chat box. I know we already have one from Kerry, so thanks, Kerry, for sending that along, and we'll make sure we get to it. And we'll also have some time at the end at about noon to take some questions directly if people want to turn on their video at that point and ask a question directly. Our poll question: do you feel you've been provided enough guidance to confidently enter into the STEM industry? We had, out of 21 respondents, 57% saying yes, they do feel that they've been provided with enough guidance to enter into the industry, and 43% saying no. And as we pointed out earlier, just prior to us starting this meeting, this is not an entirely scientific survey, because I know we are joined by some non-women today too. And so we appreciate the feedback from everybody, but predominantly women. And Grace and Jillian, is that a good sign? Are you surprised by those findings?
I think it is a good sign. I think people are a lot more conscientious about how they can help, and trying to help young, promising, all people into the sciences. And I think people are more conscientious, and that's a great sign that people are starting to feel like they're getting the guidance and the support that they need.
Yeah, I'm definitely impressed by the response, the positive response in that sense. I think from when I graduated college, my undergraduate degree, I used my school's community or alumni community outreach to find someone, a mentor within a similar field as the one that I wanted to pursue. And I think I only found one that was semi-related. And so that was really difficult for me. But, you know, with my graduating class, I've kept in touch with some of the women that I graduated with, and I know that they're still retained in their field. And I think we're all part of the alumni community outreach program. So I've had people reach out to me, which is fantastic. You know, just being aware of that bias that Grace has mentioned, that like implicit bias, and like knowing, being aware of the gaps, and educating everybody, both women and men, at an early age to be cognizant of this. I think that it is changing, and for the better.
And I know you both touched a little bit about the advocacy group that you started at Snapdragon. I wonder if you can describe a little bit of what those events look like. I know you had a great event in the Berkshires with Flying Cloud Institute with a group of young students, young women in science. They all walked away with ice cream, which is a good enticement for anybody. But I wonder if you can describe sort of what the projects are that you would typically work with a group on, and then some of the ways that you use those projects to show them that science is cool, or that there's a real career path here for them if they so choose it.
Yeah. So one thing that we really tried to focus on with the activities that we picked was trying to explain the scientific process and how you think about a problem, and how you can use your observation skills to learn about what's happening in the real world, because that's really what science comes down to. It's a lot of creativity, and then looking to see what happened and why it happened. And so what we focused on, we first did a little flow chemistry demonstration just to kind of explain what Snapdragon was and what we do. And then we looked at chromatography of different markers, and where different solvents will have different solubilities, and then you can get these colors to separate from this single colored marker. So talking about solubility and different solvents, and it was amazing. I think the kids are so smart, and they're just like, oh, that's a washable marker, so that's going to run in water, but this one, and it's incredible. They're just using their observation skills and able to think about the problems, and that was great to see. And then we did we made Silly Putty, where we're talking about a little bit about material science and how they can create this material of a desired effect of the silly putty, where it's not too sticky and not too hard, and then using again their senses to kind of figure out how to do that, and then talking about what's going on in the chemistry. And then we made dry ice cream, where we talked about sublimation instead of, you normally think of things melting before they turn into a gas, and so talking about that a bit.
I think going forward, what we'd like to do in terms of reaching young women or women of all ages is when we extend into Girl Scouts, and hopefully getting them a little bit more prepared for, doing those same experiments, but also hitting home a little bit more about like the importance of women in science, and kind of driving the message across a little bit more, as we start to probably meet with them more and more often, like on a regular basis. I think additionally, what we'd like to do is set up networking events within our area. So women within the industry, we do work in sort of an industrial park. And so there are other pharmaceutical companies within our area. And I think, we'd like to host some events and encourage other women to host some events, and just, discuss current issues, or, just network and have, maybe someone's not happy at their company, but they don't know what else is out there. Just being sort of, a friend to similar like-minded people.
And that kind of dovetails well with our next question, which is kind of, why did you both feel it was important to kind of give back in this way? You both talked about the importance of mentorship or tapping into your college alumni network. And as you said, you're both relatively still young, although quite established. So what was the sort of why, or the realization that you really wanted to be among the leaders that are giving back to the sort of next generation of incoming scientists?
That's a great question. I think a couple things that had really hit home. One is, that example that I said when, I I was told not to do something, although, my gut kind of told me to follow through with, stepping outside my comfort zone. I realized that opportunities are not going to be handed to me. You do have to, get some a little bit of internal confidence to actually take these risks on your own. So I think, like I said before, that a lot of women or a lot of people don't have that ability to or confidence to speak for themselves. So the other situation that I hit home is the individual that I was mentoring it, and she openly spoke to the group and said that she puts her trust in me to be her voice. I think that was a huge. That was great feedback, because it means it's working, and it makes me want to help more individuals. Someone that and then I think the last thing is, when I was graduating, my college provided me with general career development resources. However, I felt a little bit alone in the sense of entering the process chemistry industry. I really didn't have anybody to reach out to that was a woman in a senior role. I did a lot of the networking on my own, and it was, it's a little bit terrifying being so young to do that. But I think that's why this group is so important, is because, we can help our peers advocate, we can help advocate for our peers, and help encourage them to apply for promotional positions, and encourage them to take these opportunities that they might not, ever think that they would qualify for. So,
and then the work towards the youths, I think a little bit selfishly, I really hope that science in the future is a much more balanced field. I think that would bring science forward. It would bring diversity of thought and more creativity. It's definitely, and so I think if we have the opportunity to make an impact in somebody's life, especially at an early age, that's just going to help the field as a whole.
And I wonder, just from listening to some of your anecdotes about some of the challenges you faced through school and into your professional life, the answer may be different from Jillian to Grace. Did you feel like some of those challenges, or a lot of those challenges related to being a woman trying to carve a path in this field, were overt, or that the messaging you were getting was sort of overt or more subtle in terms of, how other people might be viewing your limits, how other people might be limiting you?
I would say in general, it's not overt. Most of the time it's subtle. It's and again, I think this came a lot from my upbringing, that was a much stronger message. I think whenever I got to college and to grad school, I was a little bit headstrong and was going to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And so I don't know if I was even paying attention.
Yeah, I would say I feel as though I haven't really noticed anything in terms of being a woman. I felt it more as being very young. Maybe thinking back on it, maybe there were those subtleties that I was missing, because I was, just wide-eyed looking for opportunities and trying to understand how to navigate my way. But when we've been educating, when we are doing these educational seminars internally, you start to have a really great environment, where I don't feel as though there's any bias towards women at Snapdragon. We're not getting that sense. I've been here for over 6.5 years, and that's it's a really nice community here in that sense. And again, with the age thing, it doesn't really matter if you look at us. So.
And then just switching gears, what do you do in your off time? What do you do, and how do you balance having a life with this very demanding job? Jillian, I know you're in your 3rd year of a master's degree, a master's program in chemical engineering at Columbia. How do you balance that? This is a demanding job. It's an industry with a number of stresses. And what advice do you give to people on how to sort of seek that balance between work and personal life?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at the beginning, it was very tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But what I found was really helpful is communication and being upfront with my boss and saying, I'm a little overwhelmed. Like I kind of need to push back on the responsibilities that I've been given. And that dialogue has helped a tremendous amount with, making sure that I'm still hitting these deadlines, but also that I have the ability to go home and work on my master's degree. And, Snapdragon has been super accommodating in that, granted, I don't have a child of my own right now, but, they've also made the accommodations for people that need to leave early due to childcare. And it's nice to have that leeway because we're openly communicating about, individuals' needs. And other than that, I definitely have a social life, and it's hard to, we have a really nice work-life balance in the sense that we're not working 12-hour days, and we're able to actually have some functions here and there. Well, pre-COVID, happy hour gatherings. So that actually makes a really nice environment to get to know your peers and, stimulate conversation that doesn't revolve around work. So it makes it enjoyable.
Yeah, and I'm very outdoorsy. I'm building a cabin by hand in Maine, and so that's what I spend a lot of time doing. But for me, a lot of the work-life balance, especially a lot of it comes from me rather than the stresses of work. It's kind of personal guilt and things that I need to work on sometimes. And so for me, what's really important is having hobbies and having something that I'm excited to leave work for. And then that kind of forces me to have a work-life balance, because if I want something else to progress outside of work, I have to put time into it.
So looking back now, what on your careers, what advice would you have for other young women that want to follow a similar career path as yours?
Yeah, I think I would have had a lot more confidence and applied myself a lot more before college. I think that's something I didn't really try a lot in high school or before then. And so I think I would have told myself to put a little bit of effort into school. But I think having the confidence to say, I can value my education. I can value what I'm learning and what I'm doing from a young age, and that's going to help you throughout your career. And to choose that for yourself. You can choose to do great things.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend going with your gut feeling. Can't stress that enough. Don't let somebody get in your head. I didn't know what I wanted to do from the beginning, whereas I see these girls at the camp and they knew what they wanted to be. And I think society can add a little bit of stress when you don't know what you want to do at that young of an age. And I would just say, don't feel the pressure. Definitely explore around, find what is the best fit for you. Maybe it's not in the lab. Maybe, you enjoy the pharmaceutical industry, but you would like to take it from a business point of view. Either way, it's a great environment to work in. I would just say, don't let somebody get in your head and ruin your confidence. There should be some, you have to believe in yourself. If not, then communicate, talk to your peers, talk about something that's going on. Maybe you're getting in your own head. I've definitely gotten in my own head at times. And, I talk to Grace and I'm like, hey, am I crazy? Am I crazy for thinking this? And it's nice to be able to rely on your peers who are going through similar things such as you are. So definitely recommend that.
So we talked a little bit about advice you might have, but is there something you might have done differently? If you look back now on your careers, were there different steps or different choices you might have taken to get where you are today?
I mean, yes and no. I think I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason, as corny as that sounds. You know, I went to college to play soccer, and I didn't go pro. So what am I going to have? I need my education. Maybe I would have gone to a different school for educational purposes, but then I wouldn't have the friends that I have today, and the connections that I have today. And yeah, I just think those experiences have shaped me. So I don't really regret anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I always was intrigued by the idea of trying to go for an academic career. And so I think that'll always be my kind of what if scenario. But a lot of things, and a lot of it came down to the atmosphere for women academics. That was a huge point, that was going to be a career-long struggle, and I didn't know if I wanted to fight that battle. And so I'm very happy with the choice that I made to go into industry, but I think that's kind of always going to be in the back of my head is, well, what would I be doing now? But I feel like I'm still able to make intellectual contributions here at this job, and am still getting a lot of the things that I wanted from an academic job in industry, but that's, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're going to both be very valuable mentors to young women coming along in the field. The Girl Scouts are going to be lucky to have you. And think of all the things you can share with them about choices you made, things that you learned along the way, saying yes to things, saying no to things. Those are all going to be really valuable experiences for young women coming along. So really great to hear your stories, and thank you so much for taking the time to share them with us. It's very inspiring, and you're only at the beginning of your career. So think about, the years to come. Do you either of you have a vision for what your life might look like for the years to come?
No. To be honest, I feel as though that causes a little bit. I definitely believe in like a 5-year plan. However, I feel as though when you promise yourself, or like you plan that out too extensively, you do create, you miss out on opportunities that might pop up out of nowhere, and you might limit yourself, or pigeonhole yourself in a decision that turns out isn't the best for you in the long run. I'd like to maybe travel. That'd be great if it was for work. Someday that would probably take me out of the lab for a bit, but I think that those experience builds and shape you as an individual and only help you further in life.
Yeah, for me, I really like chemistry. I like thinking about chemistry. So I'm hoping that I can continue to do that throughout my career in different roles, maybe, but just being able to think about these problems and trying to solve the puzzles, that's really what's exciting for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure. Thank you for the organizers and for mediating. This has been a real pleasure.
Yeah, we definitely encourage anybody that is listening that's in the field and might be just starting out, definitely reach out. We would love to openly talk about more experiences and be there for any questions that somebody might have. So thank you very much, both of you, Carol and RI Bio and David.
And I know we have some questions as well that we'll get to. I think we have a new series, Carol, which is Grace is going to show people how to make their own house. It'd be very cool. So we do have some time for questions. If people are welcome to turn on their cameras. I know we've had all the featured speakers here pinned. There is a question from Carrie LaPlante. It's a great question. It's pretty technical. So Carrie, if you're here and you want to ask it yourself, I know I see Carrie's muted there. Otherwise, I'm happy to throw it out to the group to get us started. And if anyone else has any questions or comments for Jillian and Grace, that would be great. Hi, Carrie.
Hi. First, thank you. It was really nice to hear your journey. And, I was thinking through how we did that survey, and I wonder if it was like generational, right? I'm in an older generation and I might not have had that support, but I'm hoping that it was kind of split and we're seeing a change for women in science as you were younger. Here's my question. I do bench research in antimicrobial resistance. So you inspired me talking about your chemistry, and I was wondering, with all the antimicrobial resistance out there, even though we've done a great job with infection control and stewardship, these bacteria that have been around 3.5 billion years, right, continue to mutate. We can't get ahead of it. Could your chemistry and how nimble it is with flow chemistry be advantageous in helping develop new antibiotics? Hopefully you could follow that question.
Yeah, for development, that's not really the niche that we work in, but I think what will it allow, what our technology would be useful for, is the fact that we can make platforms that are going to be usable for all sorts of different syntheses. So if a antibiotic changes, we can then quickly reconfigure a system or our strategy path forward to be able to synthesize that drug in an efficient way. And then yeah, I think that's really where we sit and where our chemistry and what we're able to do and how that might help, is the fact that we are building these tools that are going to be able to make all sorts of different molecules in an efficient way. And it really expedites the development of a path to make the drug the first time, and then the path for the manufacturing. So we really try to shrink the amount of research and development as well as the amount of time that takes. And so that's where I think we might fit in well.
That was the answer I was looking for. So happy to hear that. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? I know we've had a great crowd this morning and we appreciate everybody coming out. I see a couple of comments. Anyone else that has any questions for Jillian and Grace?
Well, I'll ask a question. We kept referring to COVID, but we didn't actually go there. So tell us a little bit about how COVID has affected your business, your work, everything going on at Snapdragon.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, we were very fortunate enough to do very well during COVID. From even a operational standpoint, we actually executed it in a really great manner. We did shifts coming back to work, and then soon enough, with mask mandates, and then soon enough, we were pretty much all back in the lab pretty early on. With business is thriving. We've had with the BARDA project and our other clients, we were fortunate to keep production moving. We were actually hiring during COVID, whereas a lot of companies weren't. I think that really says a lot about how the exponential growth of the company, it's quite strong. It's a great environment. We have plenty of work to do. Flow chemistry is the future. And I think that, from the senior leadership, they've been very, very well. They've been very attentive to the needs of their employees and making sure that we are operating in the safest manner, spacing things out and keeping our distances. We have a great HVAC system. Our CEO can tell you that it's top of the line. So yeah, I would say other than that, it has made socializing a little difficult. I think everybody, across the world has taken a hit there.
Especially with the company growing so much. We have so many, probably 50% of the company has started during COVID, and you really get a challenge to integrate those people into the company and into feeling comfortable.
Yeah. Summer was a good time for us to actually go outside and, go to some breweries, and that was kind of fun. And, but I think we have bigger plans for the future, and the facility across the street should make things a lot easier to start socializing again. We're planning on getting back into a massive room so everybody can stay 6 feet apart, but at least, talk and have open discussions, because it does make for, we're definitely testing our technology. We Zoom calls when somebody's down the hall and just making sure that, we're staying separated. But
that was another question that someone from earlier had wondered about from before we got on the call, was just if you could talk a little bit about the new facility itself, what it allows you to do and the kind of growth that you're going to be able to do in that facility, years from now.
Yeah, so the final design is, it's a really big building. What we are confident about is that they're going to be, it's predominantly for GMP manufacturing right now. It's going to,
especially for small scale deliveries.
Yes,
for
yeah.
like first in human trials, yes, or smaller drugs with smaller volumes. Mm-hmm. So that's really the niche that we're trying to fit.
Yes, exactly. It is all manufacturing. We will retain our R&D facility here in the current building that we're in. But I think in terms of business side, it allows us to take on more projects, hire more, which is fantastic for the company. We're expanding the needs and like the job roles. So it's a really exciting time to be part of Snapdragon, I would say.
And we do have another question here. This is from Nicholas Gerst. He says, do you belong to an organization like Women in Bio? Are these types of organizations helpful to promote women in science and to find mentors?
I don't. Do you?
I am fairly active in the EWOC, Empowering Women in Organic Chemistry, in the area. And so I find it very helpful, especially before COVID, where you could go to a happy hour and actually, it's so hard online to network. Any of the networking events at conferences, they're always a bit hit and miss. And so I think it's going to be really exciting to like get in the room with people again and actually have a conversation face to face. But before COVID, that was the one avenue that I was active in.
Great.
Well, Jillian and Grace, do you, either of you or both of you, have some parting words that you would like to share with everybody about maybe something inspiring or some last advice you'd like to give to everyone that's listening in?
Yeah, so I think it's just really important to find your network. Finding sponsors, finding mentors, even if it's just a peer, somebody who can really build you up, because I think it can be so isolating in this field. And so I think that's a really key to my success, is being able to communicate with people who are going to be honest with me, but also listen to me and give their advice.
Yeah, I do agree with Grace. I think that communication and just, telling somebody what's going through your head. Maybe you're nervous about applying for something. Maybe you're unsure of, your qualifications or something, or maybe you don't feel great about like the way somebody spoke to you. Like, definitely reach out to people. I think that's how I've survived. I've had great mentors, both women and men, that it doesn't matter what age or what level of profession, it's just somebody that you look up to. And I think that's absolutely key. And then I would just say, once again, like, take the risks that, that people might say. I wouldn't advise that. A lot of my decisions have been made off of making pros and cons lists, which also is pretty corny, but it's worked. It's gotten my thoughts down on paper. And I think that has been a huge help for getting me to where I am today, and listen to your heart.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you both. You're already making an impact, and we look forward to watching more of your futures at Snapdragon and in the world of science. So thank you again. We're going to close our session now. So I want to thank my co-host David and the Castle Group. Excellent job. And thank you to our sponsors, Snapdragon Chemistry. And final parting words from Rhode Island Bio. If you're not a member of our organization, we would love to have you join us. Snapdragon is a member of Rhode Island Bio, so thank you for that. And you can just go online to ri-bio.org and join on there and participate in our future events like the one we had today. So this event was recorded, and we'll have the recording available to share with people. David, any last words you want to share with everyone?
Just thanks to you as well, Carol, and to Rhode Island Bio, to Jillian and Grace and Snapdragon for being part of this great event this morning. And as you said, Carol, we'll have the video up shortly, and then we'll also pull a couple of clips and can share those on social media as well for people who may not have had the chance to join today. And then also happy to provide resources or put people in touch with Jillian and Grace following today's webinar if they have other questions. But thank you, and thanks everybody so much for joining us. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Go Jilly.